back to Atypical Talk. This is a podcast where we have conversations that illuminate the intersection of faith, culture, and the common spaces of our humanity. I'm Abby.
I'm Allison.
And I'm Joel.
And our opening question today is, if you had to choose between exploring the untouched depths of the ocean or exploring outer space, which would you choose and why?
Dun, dun, dun. I felt like I could almost answer this for both of you too. So I almost want to like whisper in here and see if my answers are correct, but it's okay. It's not how podcasts work. But I chose the ocean. Few reasons, but one part of my personality is wanting to right all the wrongs and, see an injustice and want to fix it. And their budget, the NOAA, it's not even... NASA has 150 times their budget for space exploration. We know more about the moon than we know about most of the world's oceans. And so I don't know. I'm like, it's right here on our planet. Like, I want to know everything about it.
Yeah.
But have you ever even seen Jaws?
I have. And I've been in the ocean and I still want to know what's in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I read this as like actually going to explore. And that scares me to death.
It's dark, real dark.
Yeah.
I know. Because I also thought about that. I'm like, well, up in space, there's still some light. At least you can see a little bit. Yeah, if you're deep depth of the ocean, it's pitch black.
And everything I've ever seen is like, the deeper you go, the creepier the creatures are.
Yeah,
The scarier, the more,
Shark Week,
like,
man.
it looks more and more like alien life stuff.
Yeah.
I want to
crazy.
know.
Yeah.
Okay, what about you, Joel?
Well, Jaws worked on me as a young kid, and I can barely get my wife in the ocean because she can't quite see, what is touching her feet and things like that. And I don't know why, but I think just, growing up on sci-fi has, it's probably a really scary thing to be up in space, but there's just this fantasy about it. It's like being up in space and looking down at the, the blue marble, the swirl on Earth. That sounds pretty cool. So exploring out, I mean, most of the movies that I tend to watch, space ends up being an awesome thing and not like a terrifying thing. And, Star Wars, it did its number on me. So I think I would rather do that. And I know that there's probably some great horror movies about the depth of space. But yeah, I would rather go out and explore where we haven't been in the universe.
Yeah.
And that's what I would have called for you. I would have also called it for you.
You don't know me. You don't know me.
Yeah. So for me, it's the ocean.
Oh, that surprises me because you got a NASA.
She's the whale
sticker,
shark
right?
lady, though. She's
I
the
know,
whale
but
shark
still.
lady.
Yeah. I love, aquatic life and getting to explore those and seeing, these creatures. Like, I love watching videos where they have cameras deep down in the ocein. You're seeing these creatures that they don't even know what they are sometimes.
I love watching those videos too, but being
not
the
running
one
into
down
them.
there. It would be so cool. But yeah, my husband would be upset with my answer because
That's what I thought.
his dream job is working for NASA. So, he wants to go out into space. And I'm like, I want to see what's going on here on Earth. I mean, we don't know enough about our own planet. We're exploring other ones.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I feel that.
I gotta go.
I'm
with
just
deep
like,
ocean.
we're just destroying the planet so much that we need to start planning for other places.
a plan
That's
B.
what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Would you
said
you
quite
travel to the moon
facetiously.
if you could? They're planning,
Yeah, there's
to
like
make it-
commercial
Yeah.
flights and commercial launches, I guess. I mean, if it was not the economic
Affordable,
barrier, I think I would totally I'd be up for that. I think.
I think it would be cool too.
Yeah, I would also do it.
Yeah.
I'm down for anything once,
Because
usually.
the moon's not that far compared to other
Compared to-
planets and stuff.
I'm like,
I heard
it's not.
I heard it's made of Swiss cheese too. I'm just kidding.
Big fan. Big fan of Swiss cheese.
Yeah. So on the topic of space, our first article is called "What the Voyager Space Probes Can Teach Humanity About Immortality and Legacy as They Sail Through Space for Trillions of Years." This is a religion news article by James Edward Hutchinson. The Voyager 1 is the farthest man-made object from Earth at 15 billion miles away. This spacecraft was launched in 1977 with golden records aboard. On the records are spoken greetings in 55 languages, sounds and images from nature, an album of recordings and images from numerous cultures, and a written message of welcome from Jimmy Carter, who was U.S. President when the spacecraft left Earth in 1977. The Voyager is expected to exist for over 1 trillion years, longer than the Earth and even the Sun are expected to last. In the distant future, the 2 Voyager spacecraft will still be floating in space, awaiting discovery by an advanced alien civilization, for whom the messages on the Golden Records were intended. Only those records will likely remain as testimony and legacy of Earth, a kind of objective immortality. So I love this. I never realized that, this was set out for aliens to discover. That's so cool to me. I mean, it does seem a little stupid thinking about it because I don't know. I'm not one to believe in aliens. I don't know about you guys.
You don't know if you believe in aliens?
Yeah.
I don't know if I do either.
Yeah.
Kind of freaks me out.
I'm more of a I believe in Bigfoot, that kind of
stuff. Wait.
We
can really go on a sidebar here. The Sasquatch stuff. To me, the craziest part is that they get a written message of welcome from Jimmy Carter and not a recording of his Southern drawl. I would just love to hear, Jimmy Carter, the great Southern voice, on the recording. But yeah, this blows my mind. I mean, we've talked multiple times in the podcast about wonder and just that beautiful state of having your mind blown and reminding yourself how small you actually are, and not in an insignificant way, but in a right sizing kind of way. And to think about light years and the travel and the distance in these kind of numbers, it just makes me feel really small, and it makes my drive to Indianapolis or Florida
not seem so bad.
Yeah, feel minute. And talking about how long this thing is going to exist, expected to exist for over 1 trillion years. We can't even process this reality. It does make you think of the concepts in Christian spirituality of forever and eternity, because 1 trillion years to me sounds pretty much like eternity. I can't split the hairs there. But yeah, when you start talking about distance of time and actual mileage, and you start thinking about these ways, it brings me to maybe a right sizing of myself to realize that my time on this planet, hopefully 80, 90 years, it's just so minute. It's so small. And there's something inside of realizing how brief our time is on this side of eternity that it leads me to a sense of urgency, a sense of I want to make this count. I want to make as big of a dent in the brokenness and the darkness of this world as I possibly can while I am here. When you start thinking, I only have this little bit of time left. The psalmist, David in the Old Testament, he says this in this really ancient Jewish prayer and worship song. In Psalm 90, verse 12, he says, "Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom." And so a story like this, talking about, trillion years and the distance, and realizing how small, how brief my life is, the vapor of my life, it helps me take stock of the days that I do have, the days that I can breathe, the days I can walk, the days that I can hug my children and look my wife in the eyes and feel like I belong. Because I want to, as David says, to have a heart of wisdom. I want to walk wisely. It's almost like, God, teach me how to count my days so that I can make my days count. Kind of thing. And these stories where you have these massive numbers and these massive distances and these massive amount of years, it always just points me back to oh man, I've only got this many times I'm waking up. I only have this many days, this many years. We're in the season of raising 2 toddler boys, 1.5 and 3.5 years old. And we say often that, oh man, the days are long and the bedtime routines are even longer. But man, the years have just gone by so fast. And we've even seen that in the crazy season of life that we have. And we just want to make it count. We want to make our parenting count. We want to make this time with our little ones count. And I just, pull out a little bit farther, and I want to make my life count. I want to make my days count. So I might need to think I don't have forever to make a dent, and to do something of great significance. So I think along those lines, that's where it points me, just thinking about the story, and I'm trying not to let my mind wander to the possibilities of aliens and the theological implications of aliens. But that's where that's how I
know. I'm like, if someone in space does find it, then what?
Yeah,
we could really go down the rabbit hole there. What does that all mean?
I know. it's crazy to think about.
Yeah. And just thinking about the fact that there's something out there that's going to last longer than Earth. You know, I've thought before, you know, when Earth dies, it's just going to be done. But there's going to still be something out there that is part of Earth. And it's so mind-boggling to me to think about that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So let's move on to our next topic today. This is an article titled God's Not Dead, 5th installment of the works at Pure Flix and Pinnacle Peak Pictures. This is a wrap article by Harper Lambert. The 5th God's Not Dead movie will start production later this year and is expected to release sometime next year. The first movie in the series was released back in 2014. This upcoming movie will revolve around the world of politics, following with the theme of the last movie released in the series. Here is a description of God's Not Dead 5, Rise Up. The plot kicks off when a favored incumbent suddenly suspends his candidacy for Congress. An embittered but brilliant campaign strategist is lured out of retirement and convinces Reverend Dave Hill to run for office. The race pits them both against formidable opponents from their past, each with plans to permanently remove religion's influence on public policy. Set against a backdrop of unprecedented political, civil, and spiritual unrest, Dave struggles to answer an increasingly relevant question of our time. Is God dead in American politics? So what was your guys' first reaction to hearing that there's a 5th God's Not Dead movie?
I didn't know there was a second God's Not Dead.
Good point. This is still a thing? Like, yeah, that's what
I think I watched the first one, but I know I haven't seen any after that. Yeah. And I know part of my own issue is I tend to have a difficult time with movies or shows like this in general because I know their intentions are really good and they're trying to bring to light issues and things that Christians run into in their everyday daily life. And so, I appreciate that, but I can't get past the cheesy factor in most of it. And so the cringy factor, I don't know. I just have a hard time. And that's my own thing. And I know some people really love them. And so, to that I say, like, keep being you. Keep watching, like, for me, I'm like, I can't get past it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the first one. I have so many thoughts. Please cut me off where need be.
We'll turn on the orchestra music.
Yes, play me off the stage. I saw the first one. I was a student pastor, middle school and high school pastor when I was a bit younger. So 2014, I was leading a small group of guys who were, I think they were seniors in high school that year, and they're like, "Hey, let's do a movie night. Let's go see this movie. It's supposed to be really good." So I went to go see it. And they really loved it. And even then, I remember thinking like, oh, I just don't know if I'm buying what these people are selling when it comes to, this movie series. Now, personally, it's a funny thing to me, being a pastor, and I have people tell me all the time, like, hey, I saw a movie you'd really like the other day, and it was like a Christian movie. I remember people handed me like a DVD of some kind of Christian sports movie once, and they're like, I know that this will be right up your alley. And it's just kind of funny to me because the cheese factor, the cringe factor you talked about, and honestly just the straight up quality. I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. I hate that anything that has the Christian label in front of it, especially in movies and in feature-length series and stuff, most of the time it is just not as good. It's very, it's not original, and it's just not great quality. So I have all these, beefs just with, the Christian entertainment business.
Yeah, I didn't even know that Pure Flix was a thing.
Oh yeah, man, they're you know what?
When
they
you said
they
that,
make
I was like,
so
that's
much
news.
money. It's huge business, and there's probably a ton of reasons why faithful people run to the movie theater to see these movies. But I saw the first one, and I even think back to some of the themes of the very first movie, and they're for me personally, and I'm going to say that hopefully many times. For me personally, they're just themes about faith and engaging culture that I do not engage with. I don't like to enter into these types of conversations. I saw the first God's Not Dead, and in preparation of this conversation, I watched the trailer for the next three.
I did not.
And man, like the themes of just this battle, fighting culture, the culture war, the themes of they're taking away our rights, and we should be afraid, or we need to fight back through, political ways or through partisan politics or protest and all these different things, I just seem to find to be such an overreaction and a defensive posture that I just don't find in the person of Jesus in the early church. I mean, one of the main themes that you see throughout these movies are that, the world's going to hell in a handbasket and, we need to stand up for our rights, and they're trying to take God away from us by, stopping this and stopping that. And we just need to fight back. And, man, I haven't experienced that. Maybe that happens someplace in America. I'll tell you where it does happen in places not like America, where people can't even gather publicly, places like in Southeast Asia where you can't, legally be known as a Christian. So for one, I kind of want to turn to people and be like, stop being babies. Like, sorry, that sounds harsh, but I just feel like we do not have tough skin. We have, the fact that we can gather, the fact that we can openly, even when we couldn't gather safely during COVID, we could post things on the internet. And I'm like, these are things that like other places in the world would be so jealous for. So my first attitude towards this fear is like, stop being babies. The second is like, stop being so defensive. God never asked you to defend him. He's a big God. And I don't think he's intimidated by this legislation that might not pass. Like, God's plans are going to be thwarted. You know what Jesus said was, I'm going to build my church. And he said the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Now, growing up, I always heard that the gates of hell will not prevail against it. I always thought of it as like, oh man, like hell's not going to take us over, because we're going to like be protected. But it's interesting though. It's like gates of hell, which means that like the gates were the defensive measure of hell. It's almost like the picture that Jesus gets us is that his kingdom, his movement, his church is actually going to storm the things of hell with stuff of heaven. And it's not this defensive measure of we better hunker down until Jesus comes back. It's no, Jesus is going to build his thing, and hell has no say in it. Hell is going to be flooded with the things of heaven. So I just don't hold that defensive measure. And I try to look at the world with a good eye, and I personally believe that the world is getting better. And even though there's a lot of darkness, and we're aware of a lot of the darkness, I believe that God's kingdom is advancing. And I think that there are a lot of things better today than they were 100 years ago. And we could have a whole podcast about that. I mean, there's less violent crime, less murder, less war in the last 20 years across the globe than ever in human civilization. Yeah. That's good stuff, right? We don't get a lot of airtime about that. So the defensive nature of these movies, I just don't get. And then the other thing is like this kind of like grabbing for rights and this defensive, like I got to hold on to my rights to do what I want, and they're trying to take away my rights. For one, that's just, we have not seen that in any measurable way in the West at all. But beyond that, man, followers of Jesus need to follow Jesus and have the posture of Jesus and walk through life the way that Jesus does. That's what followers of Jesus do. And I think the church, Jesus people, we always look more like Jesus when we're fighting for the rights of others instead of scratching and clawing and white-knuckling for our own rights. I think Andy Stanley, he speaks about this so powerfully, where he's like, the church always looks more like Jesus when we're fighting for the downcast, the oppressed, the outsider, their rights, instead of fighting to hold on to our own. And I just want to be a part of a community. If I only have this much time, as we were talking about earlier, on this earth, I would rather be fighting for those on the outside, fighting for those who don't have the rights that I have as a white, cis male in the West, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. I want to fight for those other people's rights and their livelihood. I think that looks more like Jesus. And then my last thought, and I know I'm like preaching here, I apologize, is it's just understanding my vocation as a follower of Jesus, and my job as a follower of Jesus. It's not to defend God, but it's to reflect God. In whatever I have in front of me, my job is not to like take up arms. I mean, Jesus had Peter take up a sword and cut the guy's ear off right there in the Garden of Gethsemane when he was being arrested. But Jesus, he says, no, we're not playing this game. You don't have to defend me. I've got a plan, and I'm not going to be thwarted by anything. And I'm just becoming more and more acutely aware to my job as a follower of Jesus is not to defend God, not fight for God, but I'm just to reflect God. And I want to reflect his attitude, his heart, his love, his mission to the world. And I don't have to have that weight of man, if I don't speak up at the PTA meeting, then I'm not defending God. And I think part of my beef with this series of movies is just to be so much like, stand up, take arms, fight back. And I'm like, no, I'm going to reflect Jesus and his love. And Jesus said, I'm not of this, my kingdom is not of this world, is the phrase he used. And God's going to build his church and the gates of hell will not prevail. And I take solace in that. And I want to partner with that. And man, these movies, they're just so scared. You're like, come on, let's stop being babies.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was trying to think too, outside of like VeggieTales, when my girls were younger, I can't remember any like actual Christian movies that I've watched. Do you?
I used to be really into
She's seen them all.
Christian movies, like pure Flix
Like
movies
what?
and stuff, because I had a friend that wasn't allowed to watch movies that didn't have a Christian theme, or if she did, they had to be on like this special DVD player that like skipped parts. That
That's
like
a thing?
it would mute bad words and stuff.
Oh, it didn't like
that.
replace bad words?
No, no.
Fiddlesticks. That would
Yeah.
make
Well,
it
that's
better.
just you being a good friend. So kudos to you.
So like I grew up on that stuff, watching a lot of them, but like thinking back, I watched a lot of the Pure Flix movies, and a huge theme of a lot of them is making
The villain.
atheists or people who are not Christian out to be this awful, evil villain that hated everyone and stuff.
That's gross.
And and if you're friends with someone who's not Christian or an atheist or something, they're not evil. They're not out to get you. Like,
No, and on the flip side, we
That's
can all
what
tell
Jesus would
stories
do.
of pretty evil religious people, right?
yeah.
People that are so convinced that they understand God correctly, that the fruit of that is evil and repulsive and oppressive. So that was another beef I didn't mention. That was like how the villain is always always the atheist or the guy who's trying to shut. And a lot of people, they have a lot of good reasons for walking away from organized faith, or they have great intellectual questions that we wrestle with. They're not evil in any way, shape, or form. I will say this note before we move on to something else too. I actually have had like a little bit of a 180 on Christian entertainment thanks to one television show called The Chosen.
Oh yeah, I remember you mentioned that.
I did not watch it for the longest time. It's a multi-episode. It's going to be multi-series all the way throughout the life of Jesus through the eyes of his disciples, and it is excellent. Like honestly, I was weeping probably 5 or 6 episodes. I watched it without my wife, and she'd walk in and be like, "What's wrong?" And it moved me in
Is it on
profound
Netflix?
ways. No, it's on its own app that you can put on your streaming services called Angel Studios, and it's all crowdsourced. But the quality of it, the storytelling, the theology, it is so powerful. So. I'm still very skeptical towards Christian entertainment, but like the way that this show showed us Jesus through the eyes of these people that he first decided to pick and call, it's so incredible. I can't suggest it enough. It's changed my life in a lot of ways. So most of the time I'm poo-pooing with you, but I cannot. It's so powerful, The Chosen. So I think we can link to ways that people could watch that in the show notes.
Definitely.
But let's hope that there's more Christian storytelling like that in the future that points a big light on Jesus and doesn't waste our light on the problems of the world or this fear-mongering. Is that a strong word? Probably, but I mean it. That some Christian movies and entertainment brings us.
Yeah. So I know we've asked this question before, but your answer is going to change. So what are you guys streaming right now?
Well, it's kind of funny. I've been, when we've asked this question before, I've been in like a dry spell of not watching anything or just watching The West Wing for the 10 millionth time or something like that. And I find myself right now, like I'm watching 4 shows at the same time, which I can't remember the last time that I've done this. It's almost like
keep up with that.
multiple nights of the week. They're like, oh, I have a new episode of this to watch after the kids go to bed. So I'm watching the new Lord of the Rings show on Amazon, Rings of Power, which is a slow burn of a show. But episode 6, oh my goodness, it was so amazing. It was thrilling. My wife walked into the room as I was watching, and she goes, is it good? I'm like, this is one of the best things I've ever seen. It was so awesome. Really,
you had
really
to wait
good.
till episode 6 for it to get good?
Well, I mean,
That's
there
where
were
you
other
lose
things that
me.
were good, but it was just like this felt like cinematic, like one of the most. I mean, it was like better than most of the things in the 3 original movies. Like, it was that powerful,
Which I haven't seen.
And there's something about a slow burn in storytelling that I respect, because little Easter eggs to things are like character moments that show up in this beautiful way. So I love that, and I was committed to watching season 1 of that. I'm watching the new, and this might be controversial, but I'm watching the new Game of Thrones show, House of Dragon, which is really good and epic. They actually had no expectations for it, but I'm really enjoying it. So I'm all into the magic and dragon stuff.
I was going to
lately.
say, I haven't watched Game of Thrones either.
I'm watching the new Star Wars show, Andor, on Disney Plus, which is Star Wars, but it's like not Jedi at all. It's kind of like a spy thriller, which has been good as well so far. And I'm also watching this really dumb Marvel show called She-Hulk on Disney Plus right now, which is like the dumbest self-referential, humorous comic book show I've ever seen. So I think it's hilarious, and I am enjoying it as the light show that it is. So I've got like all this entertainment going on right now. So I'm not even watching my old throwbacks right now. I haven't watched The Office in a couple of weeks or anything like that.
So to sum it up, you're a nerd, basically.
Hey, I resemble that remark.
Yeah, it wasn't even me this time. Abby's all in.
You know what? I know who I am.
Exactly, and you own it, and that's fine. Well, during volleyball season for us, we do not have a lot of time at home to watch shows, but I have been watching the new season of the Great British Baking Show, season 13. If you haven't watched any of the others, catch up.
Have you watched the 12 seasons before?
For sure, I have.
Oh my gosh!
Most of this
that's
also
amazing.
happens during, like quarantine when we were there forever, just watching. But have I ever tried to make any homemade biscuits or anything that they have on the show? Absolutely not. I don't bake, but it's fascinating, the show. But before that, because that just started a few weeks ago, I was watching a show on Netflix called Street Food, where basically they go to different cities and show like the different food trucks and stuff that are there and the local cuisine that you can get from them. And it's so fascinating because they talk about their struggles and the, just the cities and just kind of how they all got their start and why they're there and how they're a community of these different food trucks. And I freaking love it, because when I'm on vacation, like, you'll never see us at a chain restaurant. Like, we always eat someplace local or a food truck or some random place that I've found on, my GPS. We've gone to a few places that were actually like, closed down at that point because they no longer existed. But I love that mom and pop thing. So that street food show, if you're into that. What's
the best thing that you're like, I want to try that someday on street foods?
Well, they go to New Orleans, which I've never been to. Yeah. So I literally want to try everything. Yeah. And then another episode was in Portland, which is also on my bucket list. We've never been to the Pacific Northwest. So like I want to do both of them. But now I have a list. Like when I go, I'm like, these are the places that we're eating. Thank you very much.
That's awesome.
I just love this, the difference of our personalities, that I'm all fantasy,
and I'm
sci-fi, food. It's all food.
Everything food.
Yeah, so right now, it started the other day. I sat down and I was like, I'm going to watch an episode of New Girl. And my husband was in the room and he goes, okay, we're a couple seasons in. What have I missed? And I'm like, we're starting over.
Everything.
I couldn't do that either. I couldn't go with the incessant asking questions. Why'd they do that? Who's she? No, we're going back to the beginning.
Yeah, so we've started New Girl from the beginning and the early.
How does he feel about it?
He loves it so far. I had been watching it without him because I didn't think it was really his type of show, but he thinks it's hilarious. So
it's really Friends for millennials and like Gen Z. I feel like Friends was what that was to Gen X. I feel like New Girl is much more. My wife and I, we loved it too.
Yeah.
I like Schmidt. Nick Miller.
Funny. Yes.
One of my favorite Nick Miller lines, and this won't mean anything to anybody who hasn't seen the show. He's just kind of like a slob that you just love. He goes, I'm not convinced I ever learned how to read. I think I just memorized a lot of words. One of my favorite lines. I think about that often.
I love that line.
So that's it? New Girl? Nothing else? There's nothing in the background when Lucas isn't home?
No, that's it right now. Yeah. When Lucas isn't home, I'm usually just like listening to music and stuff while cleaning.
Or video gaming.
Yeah, we're doing that.
Actually, who says video gaming? I'm sorry. I sound like a 9-year-old. You're video gaming over there with your computer screens.
That's something I would have said.
Gaming. I'm sorry. Ancient.
So funny.
So our final topic today is called Christian Celebrity Isn't a Problem to Fix, but an Eye to Gouge Out. This is a Christianity Today article by Jake Meter. This article talks about the book Celebrities for Jesus, How Personas, Platforms, and Profits Are Hurting the Church by Caitlin Beatty. In the book, she talks about Christian celebrities that abuse their power, people like Mark Driscoll, Ravi Zacharias, and Bill Hybels. But she holds out hope that you can have the huge online platform, get the massive 6-figure book deal, enjoy the luxurious mansion, and be okay as long as you recognize the dangers of celebrity and don't abuse your power. The author of the article argues that an evangelical leader holding the title of celebrity is like playing with fire. He ends the article saying, "It's possible I'm wrong, of course, and that calling on Christian leaders to distance themselves from social media, break up their megachurches into smaller neighborhood parishes, and fully repudiate the lavish lifestyles of Hillsong preachers is asking too much. But when I survey the American church today, I see no reason to think celebrity of any sort should be preserved, and I see many reasons to think it's leading us to hell." So do you guys think do you guys think this is an issue that we as individuals have any influence? I mean, the reason that these people are celebrities is because Christians are following them.
Oh, that's a great leading question, because I think there's like, I think that we are the issue as much as any celebrity, influencer, anything is, because there is something inside of us as people, and especially in the West, but maybe it's everywhere as people, but we love to make idols out of things. Actually, I think it's just people everywhere. It's kind of a human thing, right?
Yeah.
We love to put someone on a pedestal, and if they're charismatic, if they are bold and clear, even if we disagree with what they're saying, we're like, oh, but they know what's up. There's something about us that we're so drawn to them. And I think back to being younger in ministry and having some heroes that I'm like, oh man, I just want to preach like them. I want to lead worship like them. When I'm older, I want to have the massive, big church with the big budget, all for the glory of God, of course. But that was something I aspired to.
Yeah.
And it's only been in the last probably 2 years in seeing so many of those heroes that I had fall. Some brilliant exposés like the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast done by Mike Cosper and Christianity Today, which we can link in the show notes, that have really helped me see the folly and the illusion of the power of Christian celebrity being a gift. And I think in that podcast specifically, they do a great job of talking about what is it inside of us that we want this. And I think we're all part of the problem. We're all complicit to some regard about, wanting that singular, charismatic, bold, decisive leader. And we're all drawn to it. And I think that this book by Caitlin Beatty is really pointing out the flaw and pointing out this thing that's really incompatible with the way of Jesus, that somehow we mixed up the gospel, the way of Jesus, and commercialism and marketing and American business principles, and we just baptized it all and said that this is all holy. And I think we're in a great season of deconstruction right now, where some people are saying like, hey, let's take a step back. Is that Christian? Or did we just put the Christian label on it? Yeah. So, I think that we are all complicit to some regard. And I'll say just, as a Christian leader I do have a platform. It's a small platform. But I do have to steward that. Like, it's a shadow side of what I do that I have to, watch and measure and, have hard, long looks in the mirror about. I think anybody that gets up on a stage in any way or speaks into a microphone, as we are right now, we have to ask ourselves, okay, is this feeding my ego or is this serving? And I think it's something that I wrestle with. It's a tension that I want to recognize as a tension and not just scoot to the side, don't really talk about it, because we've seen the damage done. And I think I've said it on the podcast before, but I think that celebrity is a weight that we as humans were not created to bear. I think that there is something about the eyeballs and the admiration and fans, and people aren't people in front of you. They're a crowd or your audience. Oh, man, all those phrases, they're dark to me, and there's something that I want to be mindful about. A practice that just in my work that I've put into my workflow being the pastor at our church, Bridgeway. And we're not a large church by any stretch of the imagination. But I, from the very beginning, I decided, especially as COVID restrictions were lifting, I decided that 2 hours of every week, I was going to try to connect with someone who started going to the church that I didn't know very well, and they don't know me outside of me talking at them. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see the whites of their eyes. I want to hear their stories, them hear my story, because I think it'll make me more effective as a pastor to shepherd them and to care for them and to lead them. But it also kind of shrinks the stage some to where they can see I'm a real person and with flaws, and that I'm not just a bobblehead talking, or I'm not a guy on a screen just talking at them, but I want to have a better connection with the people that I'm serving. And I'm always shocked for two reasons, because people, when I tell people that, they're like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of that. Well, first they're like, I've actually, in my text to invite them, I've had to say, you're not in trouble, trust me. I'm not going to ask you for money. I'm not going to get you to sign up for anything. It's nothing like that. But then the next thing that they say is like, oh my gosh, we've never had any kind of pastor ever do this before. And first, that like kind of breaks my heart a little bit, but it also just shows the power of like, I'm a person talking to a person. I'm not a person talking to an audience or a crowd. And I think lowering their platform in that way has been a helpful thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, one of the things that we've said around here, or that we've tried to do, is that instead of growing and growing and growing our church, which we love new people that come every week. It's amazing. But, maybe instead of expanding our, building and our auditorium, like maybe we start new life-giving churches around the area that, other people can also attend, but it doesn't have to be us multiplying multiple campuses. Like you can equip people and send them out to start new things. And so, I think there's something to be said about that as well, as far as like recognizing the fact that, hey, this is getting really large, or maybe there's a small town over here that doesn't have a church doing something similar. Like instead of us multiplying what we're doing, like start something else someplace else. So I feel like that would also, I don't know, in a way, I don't want to say diminish celebrity, but like it's not necessarily about the quantity of your churches and or the number of people that go there. Like, can you care for the people that go there well? If so, amazing. If not, or you've never met people that go to your church, or you've never, whatever. Like for me, I don't know, it's about people rather than like how big can we make the thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the key words I picked up on what you were saying was you said like, think about how big can we make, our church, or how big in your church. And a phrase that, rings around in my head in that conversation is I want to be more concerned with God's kingdom than I am with my castle. Understanding it's God's kingdom, it's God's church, and I have my little thing over here, but like I don't want to put all my energy into building my castle and neglect what God might be doing in his kingdom. And that leads to lots of different church planting practices we have at Bridgeway, of being a church planting church and not a multi-site church or anything like that. But that hopefully is something that's going to stop that celebrity thing. But also, like, the reality is, like, when you want to get the word out about something around our church, just because of what I do, one of the best ways to do it is for me to post it on social media, because I have just people that follow me or are, in air quotes, friends of mine on social media. And I think just a word of caution inside of that, for myself, but for any of us too, is like, we understand that social media is your highlights, right? It's not my real life. I'm not posting, nor should I post that, we had like an hour and a half of a war with our 3.5-year-old trying to get him to go to bed last night, and we were so frustrated and
here's
sweaty,
the picture of him
and said
crying.
all the curse words under our breath. What I mean? And that's not who we really are. Social media is a great tool. It's a terrible god, and we should all just know that the celebrities we follow, the influencers we follow, man, this is not the real life, and this is not something we should aspire to, because it's just a mirage. It's just the highlights. But I do think that Christian celebrity should be an oxymoron. It shouldn't be something that we are aspiring to. And the moment that we find ourselves aspiring to it, we have lost the plot. And I love that last line, that Christian celebrity is leading us to hell. Not that it's leading us to an eternal torment, but man, it's suiting us up for the wrong kind of eternity. Mm-hmm. It's us putting our eggs in the wrong basket. And it's leading us to not the kingdom that God is bringing here, but to the other thing, the dark thing, the thing that God is absent from.
Well, thanks for tuning in today. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to talk about, you can email those to atypicaltalkpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at atypicaltalkpod for updates about the show. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We hope that these conversations today have helped you think wider, love deeper, and partner with God to bring the up there down here in your everyday life. Thanks for listening.